Move it forward a little bit. Yeah, beyond even that first today is that. There you go. Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. We are glad to be back for another episode of Conversations from Stritch, and I'm glad to be joined by Dr. Christopher Sant, our provost. I did want to mention, I hope that everybody enjoyed their Monday as a day off from classes and work, but also as a day to reflect on our topic that we're going to talk about today, which is not only Martin Luther King and his legacy, but all the things that are going on campus in terms of issues related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I also wanted to remind people that tomorrow we will be hosting a virtual town hall, which will be a preview of our strategic plan. We hope you can join us to share your thoughts and feedback. For those unable to attend, there'll be a recording of the session, which will be available afterwards. There's a link that was sent out to you today in an email from Ray Kennelly. So please feel free to join us. We would love your feedback on the strategic plan. We've been working on it for almost a year, and we really hope that people will take the time to join us and give us their ideas. We'll be presenting a brief summary of where we're at to date and really want your feedback. It's been a good start to the semester, I must say. We're in week 2, and it's amazing to me each week, Chris, how even though it's only 2 weeks in, we have so much good news about what's going on both academically, athletically, and in all sorts of other areas of the campus. So I know you were going to talk a little bit about some of the activities that are going on.
Yes, absolutely. Great to be here with you, everyone. And I have a couple pieces of sort of general news about things going on campus. Lewis hosted its 5th annual High School Art Invitational from January 6th to 14th in the Wadsworth Family Gallery here. That is a competition or an exhibit where local area high school students from 8 high schools are featured with 36 works of art consisting of mixed media, sculpture, painting, drawing, photography, etching, and digital illustration. So the Best in Show was awarded to Adam Jackson of Plainfield East High School for his photograph entitled Absence. So congratulations to Adam. And one other thing, our senior nursing student, Kristen Kavalasakis, and our alum, Jennifer Schoenheider, who just graduated in December, and who's also the former co-president of the Student Nurses Association, were recently interviewed by CBS 2 Chicago about how hospitals are offering signing bonuses, incentives, and unique programs for graduating students. And we know that's something we've talked about a lot, about how the amazing work that nurses are doing in our community is really so powerful, and also that whole profession is being so impacted over the last few years, and nurses are very much in need. So we're just delighted that we're able to have so many programs where nurses are graduating with different degrees here at Lewis.
And I would just say, just a quick comment before we turn to athletics about that. I was just with the president of St. Joe's Hospital and the president of Silver Cross at a meeting last week, and they were talking about not only the nursing shortage is incredible, and there's been lots of news stories about that, but the other thing that they were talking about is just the difficulty of finding really all the jobs. So transporters, people that are just taking information in as people check in. So I guess I would say to our students, if you're looking for a part-time job and you think you might want to be in the healthcare field, hospitals are really in need of all sorts of people. So I would recommend either St. Joe's or Silver Cross as possible options, just to kind of work on, here's my 20 hours a week and I'm in a hospital setting. You might get to know some people, even though I know you have clinicals and all those things to work on. But there are jobs available, I know across industries, but certainly healthcare. And of course, we need people to be working in the hospitals because our whole healthcare system is dependent on all those workers. So we're grateful to all of them. In terms of Lewis University athletics, some exciting things. This weekend, actually tomorrow night, the 7th ranked men's volleyball team is going to welcome the 5th ranked Long Beach State to Neil Carey Arena tomorrow night at 7. I just want to remind people that that is live streamed. So unless you are working or you're specifically invited to be there, which almost, of our, 6,300 students, very few people will be able to be at the stadium, but please tune in. It should be a really amazing match. I was fortunate to go to Long Beach State a couple years ago when we were in the Final Four, and they have an amazing program, both really strong programs. It's going to conclude the 5-match homestand on Saturday. The men's volleyball team will against Belmont Abbey at 7 p.m. So watch both those matches. Our men's and women's basketball teams play tonight against Indianapolis, and then Saturday at Southern Indiana. So, feel free to also watch them online. Lewis University Athletic app has all of those contests that you can just click on the schedule and click on the contest. As I mentioned last week, our track and field teams are competing at Notre Dame at the Invitational this Saturday. This is the a National Catholic Invitational. It's really hard to get into this meet because there's only so many teams that can be there. So that our men's and women's team have been invited is an honor for all of our student athletes in track and field. Our men's bowling competes Saturday and Sunday at the Storm Baker Challenge in Addison. And our men's and women's swimming teams will be competing in Maryville on Saturday. A little bit of other athletic news. The Lewis University Athletic Department announced on Thursday, a week ago, that it's partnering with Big Athletics to provide the Flyers 22 athletic programs with uniforms, apparel, footwear, and equipment through the 24-25 season, which is part of the athletics department's current agreement with Adidas. So they always look so good. I mean, I'm always pleased. We all notice over the years how different teams put on different jerseys and they throw back in the NFL or baseball that'll do different things. But I'm always very impressed by how well attired our student athletes are. So COVID continues to present us with issues, Chris, but I've noticed that our Will County and the state of Illinois really seem to have turned a corner. And how are things going on campus and in the region?
Yeah, things are changing a little bit. First of all, let me just say it's so wonderful. Last week we talked a lot about canceling athletic contests, and we just named a lot, and no cancellations so far this week and going into the weekend. So it's the impact of COVID is being lessened there, and that's just one sign of some positive changes that we're seeing in our community. Through our collective, efforts, we're really minimizing COVID's impact. So thank you, first of all, to everyone who submitted the Flyers Promise and student acknowledgement, your vaccination status or booster information, and testing results as they come through. We really appreciate all those who are staying home if you are sick and doing all the other things to help keep our community safe. So yeah, it does appear like we're turning a corner in Illinois and in Will County and in our campus community. But even though the case numbers are decreasing, they are still very high. So we will remain vigilant as we move through the Omicron wave. So a couple reminders of our current mitigations. Our vaccines are, looks like we're looking at, this is a little bit of updated information, but we might, if there's another slide, we should maybe look at that, because I don't think all of this on this slide is updated. Thank you. Yeah, and that looks maybe outdated too, so maybe I'll just read this out loud. Sorry about that. I probably supplied the wrong information. So maybe you just go back to me, and so we're getting accurate information, even if it's oral. So vaccine is required. Booster is required by March 14th. So remember, let me just say, please submit your booster information if you've already been boosted. I know March 14th sounds like a long time from now. I just actually did it yesterday after knowing and announcing this time and time again. But as we're starting to keep better track of our booster percentage in our community, it's really helpful to know as soon as possible who has received the booster. So please don't put that off if you've already been boosted, and don't put it off to the deadline before uploading that into the app. Testing continues this week and next week for residential students. Weekly testing for unvaccinated individuals will continue for the foreseeable future as a part of the state of Illinois' requirement for testing unvaccinated people in our community. We continue to have the reduction of campus events to a 50-person maximum through the end of January, and as always, face coverings indoors and mandatory reporting of exposures and positive tests through the app to the hotline team. So next week from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. we will continue our testing in Memorial Hall on the Romeoville campus. PCR COVID tests for students, faculty, and staff are available, and you can go to the website or see my email today for how to register for that, and you can also walk up for those testing appointments. And that will probably continue. The 5-day-a-week thing is set through the end of next week, as that's a requirement for residential students through that time, but we'll probably continue it, if not every day, then several days a week for into the month of February. We were able to provide 160 booster shots in clinics on last Thursday and this Tuesday, and we will be announcing more soon, but don't wait for us to do more clinics here. If you haven't had the booster and you're eligible, please find a location for that booster shot in your local community.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, Chris, that we've talked about how easy it is to get tested on campus. I just got another test this week because I had a little bit of a runny nose, and I guess I just want to use that myself as an example. Runny nose all weekend, was unsure, so I decided to move all my meetings to online. Got tested on Tuesday early, got the results back yesterday, was negative, so that's great. But it's easy and simple. Monday night I got online and registered, so when I walked in, they had all my stuff. It took 5 minutes. So just making sure that people are aware of we are trying to make it as simple as possible, as frictionless as possible, the word they use all the time, for everybody on our campus to make sure that they're as healthy and safe as possible as we move through this. And we really appreciate everybody's work at making that possible. The other thing I was going to say, just because when we were talking about men's volleyball, I did want to just say again, offer condolence. It was in an email this week, but Dan Friend's dad passed away this past week, and just want to keep Dan and Laura Lee and their whole family in our prayers as they go through this loss. So, we know that people on campus are going through those things all the time, and we often talk about how we work in association with each other for the benefit of our students, but it's really about creating a community on campus. And I'm always reminded as people go through struggles, personal struggles in their own lives, about how important the Lewis community is in supporting them. So wanted to mention that. So we have a really exciting guest today, Chris, and I know you're going to introduce her, but she's not a stranger to the show.
No, and maybe just to make it a little bit more exciting, to delay a little bit, let me just remind the community of one more thing, which is that we always have the Ask Us at lewis.edu on the screen here. And I just want to remind people to, if you have questions about COVID or anything else we've talked about in the news segment for today, please feel free to write in. We may answer at the end of the show, or even contact people individually afterwards if we don't fit it in, and also, of course, ask questions of our guests during the show, and the same holds true for afterwards as well. And I just want to be clear for people who are watching that is an email address, so we always get emails, not just during the taping of this show. So please send comments or questions at any time through that email address, and we will get it and hear it and respond to it. So I'm really pleased now to welcome our guest, Dr. Kristi Kelly, Vice President for Diversity and Associate Provost for Student Engagement, Equity, and Inclusion here at Lewis University. Welcome, Kristi. Come on in. So while you're getting settled in, I'll just say we wanted to invite you to join us today because we are celebrating the Dr. Martin Luther King holiday, and it's an opportunity for us to reflect on his legacy and what it represents in our current context. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Great.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
So I guess that's really my first question or thing for us to talk about was just like, what is this, how's the week going? And, have you had time to slow down and reflect on Dr. King or some of his key messages?
Sure. So, no, I have not slowed down, but it gives me pleasure to do the work that I'm afforded to do here at the institution because his legacy lives on. I didn't necessarily go to university and say I'm going to be a chief diversity officer or a VP for diversity, but I think everything happens for a reason, and his legacy is real, and it is more necessary. It's just as necessary today as it was during his time here on Earth, and so it just gives us an opportunity to really look holistically at what his plight was and the others, countless others, unsung heroes that worked with him, alongside him.
So, Kristi, I'm interested in, I think it's been about 2.5 years that you've been in your role here, because we always had a group of people that were working on diversity and inclusion issues, even when I arrived, and then created the Chief Diversity Officer role. So maybe you could talk a little bit about reflecting on both what some of the initiatives we've done around these issues of diversity and, in this legacy of people who are struggling for people's inclusion and respecting people and issues of justice, and how kind of your experience of being a Chief Diversity Officer, and then some of these initiatives, what are they, and who have you worked with to make it happen?
So I'll start with who I've worked with because this work is not done alone at all. I've had the pleasure of working with colleagues who are just as passionate about DEI, and I would even say belonging, just as passionate as I am. So internally, there are too many to name, so I'm afraid to omit anybody. But it's collaborations with faculty, it's collaborations with staff, it's collaborations with external organizations as well, and those conversations, we start with conversations and really embracing that racism and other isms are still very much real, again, as mentioned in my opening or beginning remarks. And we've done some great things, but there's still a lot to do. Some of the specific initiatives here on campus would be our grant opportunities that we've been awarded. We've gotten the Legacies of American Slavery grant. We've also gotten a more recent grant from Donnelly Foundation where we will focus on lifting the stories of individuals of Black descent or African Americans. We've also been awarded, it was last summer, our NWD HRSA grant for recruitment, and not only access recruitment, but graduating individuals who specifically are of Black descent, and Latin descent, and including men as well. So there's the gender piece. And we've also implemented through the Faculty Center Teaching Tuesdays, where inclusive teaching, difficult conversations have been the focal points for professional development opportunities. And from a co-curricular standpoint, we've also maintained our mentoring program where students of color, both undergraduate and graduate, are paired with an alum of the university who is of color and who works to walk alongside our students in their journey at Lewis.
You know, I have a couple questions. I'm trying to think of which ones to bring up. First of all, you know, I appreciate that you said that so many people are working on this work together. And so I know that you and I talk all the time, and it's always a concern of ours that people, when they read things or watch things like this, you know, we know that many, many people on campus are doing things that we don't even know about. And all three of us know that from our roles that there's so much incredible work going on campus, and we are trying to track it, you know, be leaders of some kind, but I know that something we talk about a lot is that it's great that there's so much work going on, you know, in individual departments and colleges across the campus in terms of this DEI work. And the things we just mentioned are some of the like really big highlights, you know, that we know we're engaged in. I guess one question I have about those, a couple of those, so the Legacies of American Slavery and the recent grant from the Donnelly Foundation, both, at least in part, include hearing stories, oral histories, interviews with people in the community. Can you just maybe talk about a little bit about like why that's important, and you know what's the value of doing that in our community?
Sure. So the importance is hearing the stories of those who have the lived experiences, right? And our institution, really, we're walking with and alongside the participants and the descendants of these particular communities. So especially the two Legacies of American Slavery, as well as the Lifting the Black Voice or African American Voice in Stories, are connected to these very roots. They're local, so within Will County and things of that nature. So hearing firsthand from those who have experienced who have the history and lived experience is extremely important. And we're not doing anything for them, we're doing it with them, and to uplift them. Yeah.
So maybe both of you might want to respond to this because you've both been involved in these grants, but also just thinking about where a university, like what is a university for a larger community? I guess that's part of, so yes, these stories, we're going to kind of be a place in which these stories are able to be told, but what does that mean for Will County or for the Chicago region or in the Legacies of American Slavery for the Midwest, because we're one of the only universities doing this. So how do universities become places where stories that maybe have been untold or less told, how do we become a megaphone or an amplifier of that? I don't know if anybody...
Well, I have a couple thoughts. One is that we're helping for not only for these stories to be told, which is great and key, but also providing a little bit of professional expertise about how to structure those stories, or how to ask questions, or you know, things that professional sociologists, you know, bring to the table, or historians, and then also how to take care of those stories so that the communities can benefit from them for decades and generations going forward. And then I might also say one of the benefits of this work is that students are doing it, and that so they are learning these skills about how to value the history of our community, how to value individual members of our community, and then also how to do that professional work of listening and recording.
And I think the only thing that I would add in addition would be that it's values-based too, and it helps those who experience it or generations to come that may experience it figure out how to maneuver in spaces that are, and I don't want to bring it up because it you know, it's a part of our daily experiences for certain populations. But when you think about systemic racism, right, and or systemic issues and oppression, this type of work be it faculty and our students who are being guided by our faculty, are helping individuals to maneuver these spaces and eradicate, if you will, some of the isms. So.
And I think we all feel, and I know we want to go into other subjects, but being listened to is really gives oneself a sense of self-respect, right? I mean, it raises my sense of somebody's willing to listen to my story. And that must mean that my story is important, and all of our stories are important, but for certain communities, they feel like nobody cares about my story. And so for it to be raised up really is a matter of kind of giving them that sense of dignity just by listening and caring for it, as you said, Chris, not just I listened to it once, but I kept on asking the question, I want to get this right because we're going to put it down on paper. We're going to put it into a presentation. It might be in an exhibit for a museum. That kind of sense really gives somebody this sense of being empowered. And I think that's another important part of all this. So we mentioned at the beginning, I mentioned at the beginning that we have a date tomorrow afternoon, as many plugs as I can, I'll remind you at the very end. So tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock, we're going to be bringing the whole community together in a virtual way to talk about the strategic plan. But where do these kind of issues, these projects that we've been talking about, other things that you've been working on with a whole host of different people across the community, where do issues of diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging fit into the strategic plan?
Sure. So values and action is one of the three themes that have been developed and still developing through the strategic plan. And ultimately, the premise behind values and action is, and it's been collectively identified, so between our theme team planning members, participants of Community Day that we had last April, and members of the campus community who have been at UPRAC. Basically, it boiled down to our commitment to fostering a community, that is not only diverse, but that really heightens the belonging. And again, I can't reiterate more than anything that belonging is slightly different than DEI in that it's really about how the individual feels in their environment that they're learning and working. And so it's applicable to not only our students, but it's also applicable to our employee base.
Yeah,
So-
it's great. Go ahead.
So yeah, so it's exciting. So what are some of the, again, our plan is, well, first of all, I think it's important to all of us to say, or to do and to say that these priorities are, deeply integrated into the strategic plan, and we're really, that was really important to us going into it as a community. I think many voices voiced that desire, and and I feel really good about where we're at right now, because there's a lot of really focused areas that I'm about to ask Kristi about, but I also feel like it's integrated in throughout the plan. It's certainly the part that I worked on the most. The academic distinction area, I feel like it's much more deeply part of some of those areas as well, including a proposal for more emphasis in community engagement, similar to what we were just talking about. So, but in terms of the values in action, what are some of the things where our community might sense that priority around belonging or inclusion?
Absolutely. So we've identified a few key initiatives that we look forward to exploring, but ultimately it's about transformation. And so whether that's affording students opportunity to do experiential learning in a way that could be enhanced, we're doing a great job, but enhancing in that area. Constantly assessing our DEI efforts, right? Being evaluative around that, and maybe even setting some accountability. We are also looking to amplify our mission and leveraging the declaration that was published, and just also making sure that opportunities to have some ongoing, not only dialogue, but being intentional about actionable items. And so I think transformation at the core of all of the initiatives that have been brought forth thus far as ideas, and this is a draft, it's always a work in progress, is transformative at the core, and not only opportunities for experiential learning for our students, but being a place where people want to work and feel valued.
Yes, one of the things that just those last two comments that you made, belonging and being a place that people want to work. Chris said it's integrated into the whole plan. One of the things that I hope we get across to people tomorrow is how all of these different pieces actually do fit together. There is a real, the vision is, what kind of a university do we want to be in 5 or 10 years? And part of that is this sense that a really diverse community in which people really feel valued in the classroom is a place they learn better, right? You learn better when you feel comfortable with those 25 people that are with you in that classroom. And a really diverse room also enhances the education because people bring different perspectives to the piece of literature, to the 1700s as they read the history, to the science that they're studying. So I think that sense of belonging and diversity, and I do think that people want to work at a place, it's enjoyable to work at a place where people treat you with respect, and it's a really exciting place because there's all these different people walking around and interacting with. So the plan is integrated in that way, that we're doing these initiatives on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging because we know it's going to create a more vibrant university, which is going to make more people who visit this campus on a visit day say, I want to be a part of that community, or who come and interview at 3 different places for a job say, I want to be a part of that community. And that's beneficial to all of us and the long-term legacy of Lewis University. So we do have these next 2 months really are focused on DEI issues, right? Both January with Martin Luther King Day and then February is Black History Month. So what kind of events are coming up? What could you tell us a little bit about what we'll be seeing in the next 6 weeks or so?
Sure. So we offer opportunities for our campus community to be in association and come together. We will offer a prayer service actually next Thursday at 3:30, and it will be live streamed and will take place in the Sancta Alberta Chapel, where members of our campus community, including students, will memorialize and acknowledge, his birth, his life, his legacy, and I must mention too, I can't not talk about King and talk about his wife. So I also offer women, right? Diversity. Oh, sorry. Coretta was instrumental in making his day a national holiday. So, so yes, we will offer prayer service next Thursday. Fulfilling the Dream. Fulfilling the Dream has been offered to high school students who are of Black descent. I think we're in I think this is the 18th year-ish, maybe 17th year that Fulfilling the Dream has been offered in multiple iterations. It involves our students, inviting, being invitational to high school students and their families to explore, higher education as an option, for post-high school. And so faculty are involved, so it's a little different twist. Faculty are heavily involved this year, and I'm appreciative of their partnership. So that'll happen on the 19th of February. And then Mission and Identity and the Office of Diversity and Inclusion will offer and work together to bring together campus community members on a winter book reading. MLK, the last time we had an in-person celebration with Bishop Perry out of Chicago, he talked about the canonization of Augustus Tolton, who's known to be the first African American or Black priest in the U.S. And so to continue that momentum and learn more about Father Tolton, we will gather as a campus community to read a book about his life and legacy as well. And so we're asking that anyone that's interested in participating do so by Tuesday, and we'll meet virtually in February. So those are a few offerings, of course not an all-inclusive list, but a few key things that we look forward to doing as a campus community.
It's great.
It's a lot of great stuff. And so there'll be for Black History Month in particular, there'll be a calendar that goes out.
Absolutely. And so talk about collaboration. So Student Life Planning Committee is currently working on a February calendar of events, which will include Black History Month programs and things of that nature. Yes.
Great.
That's great.
Wonderful.
Any last things, Chris or Kristi, that you want to share with our community?
You know, when I think about, King's legacy, the idea of voters and voting and making sure that individuals, especially marginalized groups, are aware of their voters' rights as a human right. I would just, recommend that voter suppression be looked at as a serious concern. And as I was thinking about King and Coretta, again, women, yay, no, his granddaughter, who her name is Yolanda King, she's 13 years old. If you have not had an opportunity to hear this young person speak about her grandfather's legacy, she said, we know my grandfather had a dream, but let's not get stuck there, and let's address especially voter concerns, because that was one of his plights. And so, as I wrap up my thoughts about, King and again, those that worked alongside him, both Black, brown, and white, right? His brothers and sisters, our brothers and sisters, I would just keep that at the forefront of our conversations when we think about him.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's a reminder to me. I mean, thank you so much and for saying that. And I mentioned in the email I sent out a couple days ago that I spent some time reading his first book recently, and I was just really struck by how prescient, relevant. It felt like so much of it could have been. I quoted some of those things. It feels like it could have been written this year, which is both inspiring and sad, because it's still so important to be doing this work for social justice in general, and to pushing some of his primary interests, which are still unresolved issues. So thank you so much for the work you're doing, and that we're all doing together, and it's great to keep in our minds.
Thank you.
Yeah, so as we wrap up today, and I want to say just a really great letter, Chris, that you wrote, and to remind us of some of these things. And in the letter that Kristi and I wrote on Monday, that another quote from him, that sense of the fierce urgency of now, is kind of aligns with what you're saying, Chris, is that it's amazing how urgent some of these issues, whether it's, voting or issues around equity and justice, it just is amazing to me that more than 5 decades later, we're still struggling, and it still feels like this fierceness about how important it is right now to focus on these issues. It's not, we can't wait another 20 years, but it's been more than 50 years since those words, were written and spoken. I do want to, say as we wrap up that this tying between these things we've talked about today and the fundamental premise of education, universities are places where people have real deep conversations in which they disagree on issues. The democracy, the ballot box, that ability to vote is the place where we put those conversations we've had in society into a choice. And every election, and I mean from the school board in your local town to the President of the United States, all of those elections are important, and all of us should really take advantage of our franchise and make sure that everybody has the ability to voice their views of how society. But universities are places where we talk about those things, and we end up with a citizenry that understands the many factors that go into this. So sociologist information, the historical information, the scientific information that plays into any vote that you take. So, we are grateful. I think the three of us are so fortunate to be working at a university. Universities in general, and certainly Lewis specifically, really believes that students who come to Lewis and graduate will go out and make the world a better place. And part of making it a better place is through that franchise to vote. So we hope you have a really great weekend. There's lots to watch on your device in terms of athletics. And there's obviously much to read for your classes. So have a great weekend. Many blessings to you and your family.